I'm CK. Today we have a new product from our friend at Labs. It's his Scrat filter. Looks like it's got lots of interesting characteristics to it. It also comes with cards to add other additional interesting things. So we'll take a look at it, put it together, and see how it sounds. Hope you enjoyed the video. So here's all the bits and pieces. Let's look at the PCB first. This is Scrat version 1.1. Values aren't listed, but that's okay. Board looks good. All through hole plated. Jack, 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 jack. Some pots, some other pots, some switches, and I think this is where data cards can fit in, where the holder for the data cards will be. Let's look at the front panel. Always instructive. Exclamation point. Looks like a capacitor sign. I don't know what that means, but he always does interesting things like that. Then the pot here, let's see what the pots are. So this looks like, oh, these are switches, I'm sorry. So which way it ramps, looks like fuzziness. This is a bass clef and a treble clef. Resonance, frequency, and pre, I'm not quite sure what that is. And then here is a little XY thing. Let me see if the XY thing, yeah, it has an LED under it. And then the various jacks. Pretty straightforward. This bag has sockets, transistor, another socket, light-dependent resistor. Ah, okay, so that may be a light-dependent resistor. Ceramic capacitor, random value. Schottky diode and a 3mm blue LED, which again could go there. I don't know yet. It's the only one that seems to have some transparency. Then in here we've got capacitors, diodes, another LED, an orange one, and then the resistors with. So the location is marked on these labels, so we don't really have to get a build guide or something else to figure that out. And then in this bag, I believe, this is Nuts version 1. Get my scissors so I don't rip anything while I'm taking this apart. Ah, yeah. So here's his additional effects: almond, pecan, acorn, cashew, and as you can see there, it's scored here. You can't see that, I'm telling you. It's scored here so you can snap them apart. Pin header so it plugs in, and if you look at the actual layout, 2 diodes, a resistor, capacitor, diode, diode, a cap, diode, diode, resistor, cap. So it's just various configurations to get different sounds. That'll be fun to play with. And I forgot, there's another bag of stuff. 10K pots, 4 knobs, bunch of switches, panel screws, Stonky Con plus nut, panel port headers, power header, and some more resistors. So that's it. Looks like it'll be relatively straightforward to put together. And time to get the soldering iron heated up and find if there's a build guide, and we'll get this thing put together. There is a very good build guide with lots of pictures on the website, so that's nice. We're going to start by doing the diodes and the resistors first. So I'm going to open this bag up. And one thing that the maker of the kit often mentions is when you're doing his resistors, as he says, you don't have to read ring codes, use a multimeter to determine the resistor value. There are only unique sets. In other words, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. So if there's 7 of those, they must be R8, R4 through R8, and R9 through R10, because that's the only set of 7 resistors there are, and so on. There's only 3 of these, and only 2 of these, and only 5 of these. So you can do it that way if you want. But I'm going to start with the diodes. And these are the 4148s, and they go to D5, D6, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. He has bats in here, but they're not the... He has 4 bats in here, but they're not blue bats. They're the orange, clear, and black, like the 4148s. So I was a little confused for a second there, because when I see bats, I usually see blue and black diodes. So we'll do the 4148s first. Now we'll do all the resistors, and that means it's resistor time. There'll be no commentary. I'll just go through and solder these on very quickly because there's not much to say about diodes. I mean about resistors. And that's all the resistors on the board. Let's see what's next. Okay, now we're going to put the IC sockets on. Where are the IC sockets? Ah, they're in the electrostatic bag. We'll dump them all in here. In fact, I'm going to have some mechanical components in here, so I'm going to drag those all over there. See what's in ESD tonight. Another single diode. But first we'll do the... We got chips stuck inside of little boxes here. That's not real great. Hope I don't bend the pins getting them out. Oh, no, they came out okay. Okay, sockets. And this is the kind of board where my locking tweezers are great for holding it, the IC socket in position while I solder a couple of legs. And let that one go and put the other 2 sockets on. Now they're not in a great position for the locking tweezers, so I will rest it on my pinky finger behind the board. And do one leg, let it cool, take a look, and that's not quite flat, so I will press on it with my index finger now, heat this leg up again, and there, everything goes down. and is perfect. Oops, almost dropped that one. Now we'll put the 1/10 of microfarad caps on C1 through C4. Just going to verify that these are the 3.3 nano. Yep. Now I got to change my meter back to ohms, because if I don't, I will forget and get very confused. These are non-polarized, and they go in C5 and C6. Now the leads are, these are fatter. Quite a bit fatter than some ceramic disc caps, and the holes on the board are very close together. So it's kind of a, it's kind of a mush. I think you may want to look at that. Because that, it's a little messy. I'll put the transistor in. Where is it? Here it is. Flat side to flat side on the board. I like to do the middle leg first, then the two outer ones. Now a couple of 10 microfarads. 10 microfarad, 25 volt. C7 and C9. And now the power connector. Where is the power connector? There it is. It, as you can see, is not shrouded, so later on when you're hooking up the power cable, make a note of where he says the red stripe should be, the negative 12 volt rail. Let me put something under here to stand that up for a minute. And I know this is very crooked right now. I don't care, because I'm just going to solder it one leg on, and as you can see it's very crooked. So again, just press on the rest of the pins, heat this pin up again, and it goes flat. Not quite flat. Let me give it a little more. There we go. And you'll notice I'm holding it down here on the bottom 3 pins, because if you hold the whole thing and you heat it up, you burn your finger. I have done that many, many, many times. Now we're going to get the 2 pin headers that go through the front of the board. These are the pin headers that these little guys fit into. This is a little bit of a tricky soldering position, because you're in the midst of all this other stuff. So just make sure the barrel of your soldering iron doesn't contact these caps or the socket. Now I've got one leg done, and this looks pretty good. Let me see if I can get it just a little bit more. Ow! See, I just burnt myself. Okay, that's pretty perpendicular. Okay, I'm not quite sure what he's talking about here, so we'll come to it. I think what he wants to do, and let me get to the, yep, he doesn't have a final picture. That's unfortunate. I'm gonna put one of these pots on and see how this all, what the size is. I mean the height is. So I put one pot in, put that on, and see there's a big gap between those precision headers and the front of the board. So what he would like us to do is take a regular pin header strip, cut it into 5s, and insert it in there so it can go through the front panel well. And as always, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As always, you will lose a pin when you're cutting female pin headers. That can't be helped. So then that will go in there like so, and then we'll put the front panel on, and that will go through the front panel, but we've got to trim it a little bit. Oops, and I cut too close, and one of the pins pulled out. Completely my fault. Let me cut another one. I've got spare pin headers in case I run out. Yeah, this is not perfect. To see how much overlap there is there, I'm going to have to cut a bunch of trim in here to get it through the front panel. Let me cut both of these, and then I'm going to trim it off camera. Okay, I took the rough edges off with the Dremel tool. Now I've got to sand these down, and when I said you don't want to see that, what I really meant was I didn't want to move the cameras over to the mechanical side of my workshop. So you really gotta grind these down. I'm using some 400 grit sandpaper now. To get these to fit nicely into here. I mean, you got to take a lot of material off. I think he needs to rethink this portion of the kit. I think a lot of people are going to have difficulty with this. I'm going to get some rougher sandpaper, quite frankly, because I've got to really grind away at this. And I got to be careful not to grind off too much. Because you got to take into account that the panel itself is 2 millimeters thick, so you got to go at least 2 millimeters back on this connector when you're grinding material off. I got to do the same thing to this one. gotta hold this very almost flat to the sandpaper to give you the taper to go through the 2 millimeters, as I mentioned, of the front panel itself. Now let me smooth this out. We got the rough edges done. Designer of this kit may want to work on this area. Not everybody has the same mechanical ability, and if you're going to do this, and I know he gives you plenty of pin headers, because I did make one mistake. He's got to double the amount of pin headers he includes, because people are going to mess this up. Okay, now back to mechanical assembly. So we'll put the red LED. I mean red, it's amber. I'm going to go ahead and solder that down right now. Take this pot. No, I'll leave the pot in for right now. Do not solder it in place yet. Yeah, I know, I don't care. I think it's because he wants the LED to go right up against the front panel, against where that little X is, but I don't really care. You may want to care more about that than I do, but I don't care. Now we'll put all the pots on. Okay, this is going to be interesting. He recommends you put these in the panel. I'm actually going to put them in the sockets. I think that will be more successful for me. You may want to do it whichever way you feel like. But I didn't want to fight putting this on here as well as forcing these into the right socket holes. Now we'll drop the front panel on, and you'll notice I have all the switches going the same direction. It's a little pro tip for doing these kinds of things, putting the front panels on. Now let me get my pokey thing, get these lined up so they go through. And I'm going to have to press pretty hard here. Yeah, see, it's flush, protruding about, well, just enough to feel it, and it's still not quite parallel. The front panel's not parallel with the circuit board. So that's 11.5 millimeters there, and down here it's 11 millimeters, a little less than 11. So we've got 0.5 millimeter difference, unless I squeeze this really tight, which I'm not going to do because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to take this back off because I did not take the little tabs off the pots. I'll try that, see if I can get a little more snugness here. Oops. And you may notice this, I missed a cap. I was distracted by other things. I distracted myself. So we put this cap on. Okay, I think I'm done with the soldering. So let me go through and look at all my connections for those parts. That all looks good. Now put the ICs in, a couple of op amps, and then this is a, oh, that's a big ol', that's the TL074, that's the op amp. And these are H11 FMs, I'm not sure what those are. Oh, they're opticouplers. FET opticouplers. And there we are. Now, we've got left over, we've got a light sensitive resistor, another LED, and another, I forget what this is, another bat. Diode and a 684 68 microfarad capacitor that we don't seem to be using. Various sample components to use at the panel ports of the completed modules. They do not go on the PCB. So I guess we can kind of shove these in here and do interesting things. And maybe that's why it says caution, no electrolytic cap in there. Okay, so we can play around with this. Now get the power cable. Actually, first let me put the knobs on. And try and get the index marks close to each other. Now the power cable. Paying very close attention to the red stripe. And there it is. That's the front with the little plugs for these guys once I snap them apart. Side is the back. Other side, bottom, and top. Now it's time to put it in the rack and see how she sounds. Alright, we've got the Scrat in the rack, which is kind of like the Cat in the Hat, I guess. Everything's down. Just to go over this a little bit more, this switch up is high pass, down is low pass. This is the resonance. Clean resonance up here and resonance with harmonics here, and same with treble and bass, how it's going to resonate. Pre-filter or pre-conditioning, give it a little more crunch if you want. The resonance knob, of course. Frequency change knob, and that's where the LED behind the panel lights up, as you can see. And this I just read this, let me read this again. So if there's no CV coming in to freak, this adjusts frequency cutoff resonance controls too. So we'll start with them all down, and coming out of the Buffaco Even VCO. Everything you'd expect. Now we'll add some resonance. And as you can see, as he says, it's very aggressive, but very interesting. Now I'm going to put an LFO into the frequency side. So that's the kind of thing it does. I'm going to plug one of these little cards. This one has a diode, 2 capacitors, I think. See what this sounds like. First, let me get something so I can see what I'm actually doing. Yep. Let me take the LFO out for a second. So that obviously changed the sonic character. Now I'm going to put both of them in, and this one's got a diode, resistor, 1 cap, and it looks like an LED. I don't know why I'd have an LED. Now take a look at it. Now what does that sound like? So, that's what we've got. A very aggressive, crunchy effects unit. Sounds really interesting. There's some very short things you can get out of it. Let me get the LFO really racing. So lots of modifications you can do to this. Let's go into the pre here. So a good unit. The only thing, again, the only challenge I have is in these two connectors. It's a little bit of a pain to get them to fit into the panel, but it works. It makes some really aggressive, interesting resonant sounds and some other things you can do, particularly as you saw when I pump up the speed on an LFO. It sounds very interesting. So another good unit from Neutral Lab, the Scrat, and hope you enjoyed the video.